is on your right. Evan Keil is on your left. It's Death Shadow against Obzon Company. These players will be given the green light here in just a moment, and we will start round number 1 of Modern Action in just a moment.
This should be an informative match right here, because if you had to think of decks that should fundamentally have a good matchup against Death Shadow, it should be a deck like Obzon Company, a deck that can threaten its own very fast kills, a deck that can get to the battlefield very fast. It's not like this Death Shadow deck is really great against chump blocking, and part of the reason you see Liliana the Last Hope is that Lingering Souls is a real vulnerability for this list. It's de-emphasized. The Teamer Battle Rage, it doesn't have a whole lot of effects that grant Trample. And if you didn't want to play Death Shadow this weekend, and you wanted to play something that should be good against Death Shadow, Obzon Company would be on my short list of recommendations. So I'm interested to see how this match plays out.
Obzon Company, a deck that did make the top 8 of Grand Prix Vancouver last weekend in the hands of Eric Severson, a member of Team Mash Drop. So congratulations to him. As we head over to Gerry Thompson after Evan does play a copy of Birds of Paradise. He's down to 17 as Evan because of a fetch for a Temple Garden. Get used to that being the life total to open things up as Thompson falls down to 18. I think we can get used to Street Wraith being cycled this weekend too.
This is how, when Richard Garfield imagined Magic, this is what he thought of.
Yes.
As just putting cards in your graveyard and taking damage for no effect.
Thompson down to 16 now. Let's make it 15. Probably 13. Probably 13 in a moment. And hey, why not? How's the 11 sound?
This looks right.
Yeah.
Looks how the game was intended.
There's an Overgrown Tomb. Gerry down to 11 on the first turn of the game. You've got a Kitchen Finks, a Spike Feeder, a Forest, a Godless Shrine, and Birds of Paradise. So not the most threatening hand here from Evan Keil.
But it is some amount of a clock and some amount of chump blocking. But as far as hands that Thompson can see, this is on the less powerful side. I would imagine Finks is just the best brawler here, the most impactful card, and will be selected over the Feeder.
Gerry will take a long look at it, figure out what he does want to select. But you have to imagine if Gerry's hand is any good, keep in mind he is on a mulligan of 6, he's probably happy to see those cards staring back at him right now. Not the most threatening of hands. Yes, this deck can draw Collected Company, Court of Calling, all that good stuff. But for right now, he's actually doing okay.
It's only kind of bad news contextually because of the matchup. Not a hand you want to see, but soft on as far as those hands go.
It's a Spike Feeder here for Evan Keil. His draw for the turn was his own copy, of Overgrown Tomb. So he's got 2 lands and a Bird's Paradise. He needs some action. Collected Company, probably the best draw he can have next turn. We'll see if he's able to find it as we head over to Thompson for his second turn of the game.
And Thompson there with a big draw there with land number 2. You can see a Tarmogoyf and a bunch of 1-mana spells in his hand. So getting the second land on this turn really opens up the efficiency of this hand.
Decisions here for Thompson as he does scroll through his hand. Verdant Catacombs in the grip. You mentioned the Tarmogoyf, a couple discard spells over there as well. The goal of this deck, of course, is to get Death Shadow on the battlefield. It gets very large very quickly, kills the opponent very quickly.
The deck is also very complicated to play. And the timing of things like Mistress Bauble and Street Wraith, managing your life total. This is not a simple deck to pick up, even though it just looks like Thompson is cycling a bunch of cards and casting discard spells, and now a Tarmogoyf.
Here is a Tarmogoyf. Blood Crypt, the land that Thompson will search for. So he's already down to 8, and Tarmogoyf is a 3/4. One thing to know about this deck, as Keil does draw a card, looks like it's a Renegade Rallier. But one thing to note about this build of Death Shadow, you have Bauble that you mentioned, Street Wraith, which puts a creature in the graveyard a high percent of the time. Plenty of fetch lands, of course. That's not going to be a problem for Tarmogoyf at all. But also Tarfire here as well. So these Tarmogoyfs, currently a 3/4, but easy to make into a 5/6.
Yep. Tarfire here, a concession to a couple things. One is Tarmogoyf, and the other is Traverse the Uvenwald. Tarfire, a great enabler. Almost impossible to not have Delirium if you have a Tarfire early on in the game. Now, I talked to Josh Layton, who won the Grand Prix, and he says he would not play Tarfire again on the list. Thompson playing 3 this weekend, I believe, so still some disagreement, even among the players who had success, about how the deck should be constructed.
Looks like Birds of Paradise is going to get a counter from the old Spike Feeder, going to come across here for 1 point of damage. So starting to chip away here is Evan.
Can't attack on the ground. Got to race a little bit here. Keil has to know he doesn't have all the time in the world.
Traverse the Uvenwald, the draw here for Thompson. He's got 3 different types in the graveyard right now: a sorcery, a land, and a creature. So he's just 1 away from Delirium and making that into a Demonic Tutor for creatures only.
Now this would be a great spot for Tarfire.
Absolutely.
On a number of fronts. Josh told me during the Grand Prix that he believes that he targeted himself with Tarfire more than anything else.
I like that. Gotta get a little frisky.
Like that.
See how Thompson does want to move forward on this particular turn. It's funny because every game that you play with this deck, you're more or less starting the game. This is a bit hyperbolic, but kind of at 5 life.
If you're doing what you're trying to do,
yeah. So you've got to do this kind of juggling of, man, I'm really trying to kill myself, but it helps me kill my opponent. So he's always under the gun. Now here's a copy of Fatal Push. And now Traverse the Uvenwald is turned on. And I have to imagine we're going to see him go get a Death Shadow here. It's possible it's Gorklan Rampager, but he will go get Death Shadow. And now here comes Tarmogoyf into the red zone. There's the namesake of the deck. Single black mana for a 13/13. Death Shadow gets -X/-X, where X is your life total. So right now it'll get -7/-7. Just merely a 1 mana 6/6.
A fine deal.
Evan Keil will draw for the turn here. Again, he's on the hunt for Collected Company.
And you can see why this deck plays one Gorklan Rampager here as a bullet to find what Traverse the Uvenwald. Chump blocking is problematic for this list. And Keil can still potentially win this game by racing if he can find opportunities to get in some chip shots or find a flying creature and just use random Birds of Paradise and such to chump the game out. Because this deck deals so much damage to itself, it doesn't take a whole lot of racing.
Birds of Paradise and a Noble Hierarch. And a passing of the turn. Would have liked to see the Noble Hierarch pre-combat.
Unless Keil is trying to manage the life totals in a very specific way, yeah, I would have liked to get the extra point in.
Last card in hand for Evan is a copy of Renegade Rallier. So we head back over to Gerry Thompson. We know he's got a Death Shadow in his hand.
And not a bad setup here for Keil, as next turn, assuming everything goes right, he can move the counter from Spike Feeder onto the Birds of Paradise and attack for 2 with the assistance of the Noble Hierarch trigger, and then Revolt's triggered. So he can go and play the Renegade Rallier, get something back, maybe another bird, maybe another chump blocker, and if Thompson can't find a way to generate trample, either with his 1 copy of Tier of Battle Rage or his 1 Gorklan Rampager, Keil might be able to steal this one.
Yeah. Here comes Tarmogoyf. Looks like Noble Hierarch's going to jump in the way. That'll work just fine. Now, interesting decision here between blocking with Noble Hierarch or Birds of Paradise. Noble Hierarch provides Exalted, but Birds of Paradise is a flyer.
So this is really painful. I liked the line that Keil was going to take here because I think his plan was move the counter onto the bird, get the Noble Hierarch back with the Renegade Rallier,
sure.
And he needs the bird to be eligible to attack this turn for that to make any sense.
Now the draw step here for Evan was a copy of Court of Calling. He could Court for 3 here, and now we have to take a long look through the deck list about what is worth courting for. He does have a copy of Fiend Hunter in the list.
Fiend Hunter is a very good one to find.
Even Mind Sensor, a nice bullet. Eternal Witness, a nice bullet. You see the Spike Feeder because of that combination with Archangel of Thune. Can't court for that, of course. At least not right now.
Ideally, you do something a little bit cheaper here, just because I think Keil really wants to get the attack in this turn also. So if he's got a Haymaker for 3, and maybe Fiend Hunter counts, and that's just what you do here, you would like to do something, even something like Court for 1 to get a Noble Hierarch and move the counter onto the bird and attack for 2. That seems in range to me too. A lot of good options here.
Unsure right now.
And cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah, if you go, yeah.
Tap the feeder, nah, never mind, go.
Yep, if you do that, the cat is certainly out of the bag. Thompson's hand right now, a Thoughtseize, an Inquisition of Kozilek, and a Street Wraith.
And these resources, you know, Thompson really can't leverage here. All of them demand his life total. None of them get through the chump blockers, and he's dead on the way back. It's possible he has to cycle Street Wraith and hope to find Gorklan Rampager or a Traverse the Uvenwald to go get it. But if he believes that Keil has drawn Court of Calling, which his body language would suggest, Thompson knows he can go get Fiend Hunter or some other removal spell for 3, and that might not work.
Gerry's going to lead out here with an Inquisition of Kozilek, which is going to force, Evan Keil's hand.
Yeah.
So that's not a bad place to start. Because you'd much rather play it pre-combat as opposed to walking into Cord in combat.
Right.
You don't really know what this thing's going to cough up.
And that Inquisition's not doing anything anyway. So you got to clarify the game state a little bit here for some action.
So will it be for 2 or will it be for 3 here for Evan Keil?
The risk here with doing it for 3 and getting a Fiend Hunter from Keil's decision is if the last card in Thompson's hand is a removal spell, he just dies. So I think Keil's probably considering, is there a 2 I can go get that's productive in this spot that allows me to leave a blocker up, or do I just need to cord for Fiend Hunter and hope to fade the removal spell?
Now, this is interesting. Cord for 3, with it on the stack, gain some life.
Oh, this allows him to get a Rallier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Rallier can get back a chump blocker.
He has 2 copies of Renegade Rallier in his main deck. But perhaps he's still going to get the Fiend Hunter, so this is a bit interesting here.
Well, the Fiend Hunter is very weird if you were going to go ahead and sack the Spike Feeder, because the Spike Feeder is enormously valuable as a chump blocker and a way to move the counter onto the Birds of Paradise. So if he's going to sacrifice, I have to imagine it's just getting back Renegade Rallier and rallying back a Noble Hierarch, most likely, maybe a bird.
So Revolt trigger, it is Noble Hierarch. And now Thompson's in this weird spot too, because if he just attacks with both creatures, Keil can probably just say, I'll take most of it and then attack with Renegade Rallier plus Exalted Trigger, which would be 4.
Right.
So here comes Death Shadow. 9/9, pretty big.
And this is part of the trouble playing against this deck. It's really hard to play around everything.
Yep.
If Keil knew the contents of Thompson's hand, I'm sure he could have locked up the game last turn, but he just doesn't.
Renegade Rallier is going to block, it looks like.
I like this block here for a number of reasons. I think Keil wants to keep the mana just because you never know what you're going to draw. And also, I want the Exalted to be able to start hitting with the bird.
Big draw step here. Did not get a great look at it. He is tapping mana very quickly, though. It's a Viscerus here.
Viscerus here is not bad here. Again,
Another
chump blocker, a little bit of value. Keil's got some high leverage draws he might be able to scry into as well.
So Thompson's going to fall down to 3. He'll draw a card. Didn't get a great look.
I believe it was Kolagon's command.
There are worse draws. Does he have any basics this week?
He does. He has a swamp and a forest. Makes sense to have some basics. 1, you want to preserve the life total, and 2, sometimes I think you would just want to be able. You want to have the option of being able to traverse for a land. And this deck plays a little bit deeper than previous builds of Death Shadow. You do have some 3-mana spells like Kolagon's command, like Liliana the Last Hope. So it makes sense to have some basics. So if you get Pathed, you get the mana from that.
Here comes Death Shadow again. There's a chump block.
The chump and scry here would line up with the line that Keil took last turn.
Yeah, the tough part here for Keil now that I think about, let's see if he leaves his card on top. He's going to. I think he might be discarding that card in a moment.
And losing the bird.
Yeah. But it all depends on what the card on top is, because if it's Collected Company or another instant, he can still play it.
Right. But a lot of his deck is played at sorcery speed.
Correct.
And there's a lot of creatures he would leave on top of the library at this spot. So that Kolagon's command was a huge draw.
So we'll get a better look at what that top card here is once Evan Keil goes to his turn. For now, Thompson's going to sacrifice a Wooded Foothills. He'll fall down to 2, get a basic forest, and prepare to play a Kolagon's command, most likely in the draw step. So yes, you see him saying, in your draw step, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to kill your bird and make you discard. Evan Keil, what did you leave on top of your deck?
Ooh.
Eternal Witness is a huge hit.
That would have been a huge draw there.
Mm-hmm.
Would have gotten back a lot of chump blocking. And now Keil is in the abyss.
Now we go over to Thompson. Thompson's going to be able to attack with both creatures here as he plays a copy of Verdant Catacombs. Noble Hierarch looks like it might be on chump blocking duty now. I'm checking for Murderous Redcap. Some decks have moved away from this card. I don't see any.
No Redcap, it looks like. He still can draw a Court of Calling and just Court into Collected Company and just Collected Company enough gas to hold off for at least 1 more turn.
Yep. Bird of Paradise. That's a chump blocker for the Death Shadow, assuming Thompson doesn't draw a removal spell. And then Keil's still trying to hold on here. Thompson will untap. He will draw. He's found a Fatal Push. That's timely. Kill that and kill you. Gerry Thompson gonna win game number 1 here over Evan Keil. Death Shadow up again over Obzon Company. And what you just watched there is what you're going to be watching a lot this weekend, which is Death Shadow kind of walking the tightrope every single game because that's how most of its games play out.
You can also see that this deck is extremely complicated to play against. I think if Keil could look at Thompson's hand, it would not have been hard for him to win that game, but he was chump blocking very early on out of respect for Teamer Battle Rage, Become a Man's getting burned out, what have you. And now we're going up to game 2 with Thompson up 1.
Well, we are going to take a look here at the sideboards for both players as they will go into the tank and figure out what they do want to bring in. I'm going to start with Evan Keil's side. He's got 3 Tide Hollow Sculler, 2 Voice of Resurgence, a Chad Castell favorite, from what I understand. 2 Path to Exile, and then a bunch of one-ofs here in Sin Collector, Qasali Pride Mage, Burrington Forge Tender, Phyrexian Revoker, Selfless Spirit, Orzhov Pontiff, Eidolon of Rhetoric, and Abrupt Decay.
A lot of these cards don't line up the best in the matchup. I think the one Abrupt Decay is very easy to bring in. A lot of these other cards, the Burrington Forge Tender, not really that sort of matchup. The Orzhov Pontiff, not really that sort of matchup. The 2 Path to Exiles are nice here. I can see the Sin Collector coming in as well because Thompson plays with a lot of spells, but sideboard a little on the light side here for Keil.
For Gerry Thompson, 3 Fulminator Mage, 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Ancient Grudge, 2 Collective Brutality, an Abrupt Decay of his own, along with a Maelstrom Pulse, a Liliana the Last Hope, a Kozilek's Return, and hello, Big Game Hunter.
Big Game Hunter. Well, I like all the removal that's 2 for 1 or a lot of value against the 1-toughness threats. Kozilek's Return, Liliana the Last Hope, I think are all very solid here. I like the 2 copies of Collective Brutality as well. For similar reasons, there's a lot of small creatures in Keil's deck, and also being able to tag one of the marquee spells, either Collected Company or Court of Calling, really valuable for Thompson.
Those are the options here for both players for game number 2. We'll be watching that game here in just a moment. In the meantime, we are going to talk about the weekly sale that is taking place on StarCityGames.com right now. It does end at Monday. Ends on Monday at 10:59 a.m., but you can get some cheap standard singles right now.
Yeah, over at StarCityGames.com, there's a weekly sale. Happens every week, starts Monday, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, so make sure to be checking back to the website at least once a week to see what's on sale. Right now, up to 50% off select standard singles.
You see that Feldar Guardian right there?
Yep.
Might not be with us that much longer. Who knows?
Who knows? I don't know. It's not here. Speculating on ban list policy has proven to be a fool's errand.
That's true.
It's in range. It's in range to get banned, but who knows? Who knows?
Either way, StarCityGames.com. Check out the weekly sale. I have a new weekly sale for everybody on Monday at 11 a.m. East Coast time. Head back down to the feature match area, learn a little bit more about the player on the right, coming off of a top 4 finish at Grand Prix Vancouver. We saw him playing the Players' Championship last year as well. We've seen him do a lot here on the SCG Tour. I'm talking about Gerry Thompson, of course, 32 years old, from Elk River, Minnesota. 22 open top 8s, 5 open wins, 7 invitational top 8s with 2 wins as well. Jason Ford, a good friend of his, holds the rights to name his firstborn child. At one time, and this is true because I've known Gerry for a long time, he had $20,000 underneath his bed in a shoebox.
Where else would you keep it?
I don't know. And enjoys starting trips to play Pokemon Go at 4 a.m. And with the new Pokemon Go update, he's been battling. We were in Vancouver last weekend at the Grand Prix, and after day 1, he started off day 1 9-0, and he's like, we got to do some Pokemon Go before dinner.
I'm not really up to date with what the update is like. I have seen some photos. I think Jim Davis, a passionate Pokemon Go player, but not really in the loop anymore.
Yeah, it's not really my thing, per se, but those who are a big fan of Pokemon Go, very, very passionate about it. So
most things are not my thing. That's true of most things.
Well, we will take a moment here as these players do shuffle up to allow our wonderful people over at Ultimate Guard to show your product and take a quick moment of your time. Ultimate Guard's undercover sleeves will be available in April later this year, so keep an eye out for those as we get ready here for game number between Gerry Thompson and Evan Keil. Got Death Shadow on your right, Abzan Company on your left. I think 2 decks that are going to be pretty popular this weekend, Patrick.
Well, Abzan Company has a reputation as being one of the better decks in Modern, especially if you're looking to play a longer, more interactive game. There's a lot of people who just don't want to be slamming on the turn 3, super linear, not very interactive decks. So you get to play Magic, but also you have your own powerful stuff, your own combo kills rolled in. And again, I think it would be easy to talk me into playing this deck as a response to Death Shadow aggro, as this deck is not the best against chump blocking or combo kills that can be put together very quickly, and Abzan Company has a lot of both.
And this deck is looking to gain infinite life. Between Spike Feeder plus Archangel Thune, you got Malera, Kitchen Finks, and Viscerus here. We're going the infinite life route in multiple different ways here as Evan Keil. So I like what he's trying to do. A lot of decks can't beat infinite life right now. He's going to start by sacrificing a Windswept Heath. He's down to 19. How low will he go?
And given the removal suite in this deck too, you know, you're looking at Tarfire, Fatal Push, Abrupt Decay. It's ambitious, but this deck does not handle opposing 5-mana creatures very well that are big. So that could be a route here. Just getting to Archangel Thune ahead of schedule, that might be good enough.
It's a basic forest and a noble hierarch, so the acceleration is here. We head back over to Thompson. Looks like he's picked up a copy of Tarfire. What I like about Thompson's build of this deck is that he's got 7 1-mana removal spells in his main deck, 4 Fatal Push and 3 Tarfire, so he's able to slow down mana accelerants quite easily.
Well, a lot of this list power is this is the best 0 and 1 mana stuff you can do in the whole format.
Mishra's Bauble will allow Thompson to take a look at Evan Keil's next draw step.
And I like that because it gives more information about whether or not he wants to cast Tarfire, Inquisition, or Kozilek this turn.
Now Thompson will sacrifice a Wooded Foothills.
For example, if there's a high quality 3 on top of the deck, you probably want to kill the Noble Hierarch and then tag the spell drawn next turn with the discard spell.
He'll get Overgrown Tomb and he will go with the discard spell. So we'll take a look at Evan Keil's hand here in just a moment. Overgrown Tomb, Temple Garden, Archangel of Thune, Kitchen Finks, and Chord of Calling. And remember, Thompson knows the exact card on top of Evan's deck as well, so he's working with perfect information for this decision. I'm sure Thompson will write down the contents of Evan's hand here in just a moment, and we'll see exactly what Gerry does want to select. Again, Archangel of Thune, Chord of Calling, Kitchen Finks, Overgrown Tomb, and Temple Garden, the contents of Evan Keil's hand right now. He'll have one less card here in just a moment.
Looks like Thompson also brought in Surgical Extraction,
Okay.
if I saw his hand correctly.
Gonna take Chord of Calling.
Also brought in the Kozilek's Return.
That does not surprise me.
Yep.
I like Kozilek's Return from his deck quite a bit, actually. Thompson and I'll draw a card there for Mishra's Bauble. Eclectic Company in the draw here for Evan Keil. Temple Garden on the battlefield untapped here for Evan. He'll fall down to 17. Kitchen Finks is here. Going back up to 19. And if you were on the other side of the table, you'd be conceding right now, probably.
I'd be ready to let this one go.
That's probably it.
Go game 3.
Yeah.
All right. Fine. You win.
Yeah. Not sure anyone could possibly beat one of those.
Right. That is like cheating.
Thompson going to play a Blood Crypt untapped. It looks like he will fall down to 15. Is it time for a Tarfire? Yes. Now traverse the Uvenwald with Delirium. Tarfire, a tribal instant. That's 2 types. Mishra's Bauble. That's an artifact. That's a 3rd type. There's a land and a sorcery down there too, so he is certainly got Delirium going. Here's Death Shadow. Razor Verge Thicket off the top of the deck. That's land number 3. And we know Evan Keil has land number 4 plus Eclectic Company in hand, so we might see the powerful instant here in just a moment.
And Thompson knows about this as well, as he, with the Mishra's Bauble, saw that Eclectic Company was the top card. You ever watch a deck in action and just in the first couple turns get the feeling of this is not okay?
Yes, all weekend last weekend in Vancouver.
You're getting this vibe, right?
Yeah. The entire time that I watched Gerry, Josh Utter-Layton, Sam, Matt Severa all play this deck, I was just thinking, well, I'm playing the wrong deck this weekend.
My theory on Modern, ever since the Splinter Twin banning, has been find the best stuff they let you do for 0 mana, find the best stuff they let you do for 1 mana, and that's probably the route to a very good deck.
Yep.
Whether that's Gitaxian Probe, whether that's Mox Opal, whatever. This deck is really, it looks like it's figured out that puzzle. What's the best stuff to do for 0 mana? What's the best stuff to do for 1 mana?
Thompson will cycle a Street Wraith. He's down to 10. Verdant Catacombs going to bring him down to at least 9, maybe more.
It's also just hard to play against, too. I mean, you could see Keil last turn didn't seem entirely sure if he was supposed to attack with his Kitchen Finks.
Now Thompson's down to 7. Traverse. Is it maybe just another Death Shadow?
Or maybe a Gore Clan Rampager. Another Death Shadow.
Yeah.
I thought he picked up a Death Shadow on his draw step, so I thought he might be going for a trample effect for next turn.
I just thought, I'm going to play 2 6/6s, and your collected company had better be darn good. That's what Thompson's saying here. Down to 17 here for Evan. Viscera, Seer, Archangel through the other cards in hand, but he's going to play a main phase collected company right now. So we'll take a look at the top 6. We can see if he'll be able to find 2 to take with him. Voice of Resurgence among the cards here. Another copy of Kitchen Finks as well. So he's got a couple options. I think a Spike Feeder there too.
Yep.
Some good cards here.
A really solid sea of chump blockers,
Yeah?
but it's not clear if that's going to be good enough here.
Looks like Evan might have a quick question here for a judge. Not sure. Looking for the Oracle text on something.
11 o'clock standard challenge. Your pairings for round number 1 have been posted.
I think I like the Feeder plus Finks combination here. Feeder gets him halfway home with Archangel of Thune, which he already has in his hand. And the Kitchen Finks obviously going to do a great job of chump block.
Yep. This is one of those spots where if I'm Keil, I'm thinking, if this is wrong, then I, well, what?
Then there's no being right.
Right.
3 mana here for Thompson. Jeez. Kozilek's return.
Jeez.
Oh, this is a giant. This is a giant. This is a giant baiting, is what this is. This is a giant baiting. So I was going to gain 4 life, and now with Kitchen Finks Persister on the stack, got a surgical dose. This is a giant baiting.
No.
Archangel with Viscerous here. Those are the leftover goodies.
So I guess the line there is to just move the feeder counters onto the Finks if you know that you're supposed to play around Kozilek, surgical extraction there.
Well, if he had mana open.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Doesn't even have mana.
Yep, never mind.
Your modern constructed is ready for you. Please meet your event.
It's mana to move the counters, but it's free to remove to gain life.
To gain life.
Excuse me. Been a little while since I've lost to that card.
Yeah, I didn't imagine Spike Feeder wasn't fun for you to play against.
Damage on the stack?
No.
Oh, it's damage on the stack?
Yeah, nope. So Evan Keil has just had his plans destroyed.
Yep.
And now Death Shadows. Let's see. 13 minus 5. Quick check. That's 8.
Times 2.
16.
You got it.
All day. No coffee necessary for that.
Guess he should have taken Voice of I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't know. Whatever.
What I do know is he's at 7 now. This deck is a hoot.
A lot going on for 0 and 1 against 5, the number 5.
All right, Abrupt Decay is a nice draw.
Yep. The Viscera here gives him a chump blocker. The Abrupt Decay gives him a removal spell. There's still some hope Archangel of Thune could make its way into this, but it's going to be very hard.
I take it back. I have bad news.
Doesn't have enough black mana.
You've found the bad news.
Yep.
Yes, you have found it.
Sorry. Should have assumed this didn't work out somehow.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news. Bloodstained Mire here for Gerry. He has Collective Brutality and Inquisition of Kozilek. Going to start with Brutality. Going to go after Viscerous here.
Yeah, even though the card in his hand doesn't do anything, I don't think he wants to drain here because he actually loses damage that way.
Evan will sacrifice the Viscerous here to scry. Here come Death Shadows, and that is going to do it. Gerry Thompson going to win this match here over Evan Keil. 2-0. Death Shadow going to take care of Obzon Company. Top 4 in Vancouver for Gerry Thompson. Maybe another top 8 here on the SCG Tour. That's a hell of a deck he's got over there, Patrick.
And you can see Keil right now running through the lines in his head, talking to Thompson about things that could happen. I think Keil probably could have won at least game 1, maybe not game 2, but possibly if he could just know the contents of Thompson's hand. This deck